collapse, right? Good luck. So, but we can't really, like I also pointed out before, we can't trust the planet. We can't trust nature to do it for us, because even though the collapse is likely, it isn't certain, right? And we do it on the way to us for ourselves too. I just had to go into the forest, and uh, I feel like I'm alive. Between the trees, there is nothing greater than that, really. Uh, it's subtle at first, when you are untrained as a forest worker, really. But uh, after a few weeks, you start to get safer, a better take on it. Your feet moves better on the trail and everything. The forest, the wilderness, is our home. So, given the circumstances, there is nothing I wouldn't do for that, really. Of course, we are put we are put in chains from an early life, right? And we have to liberate ourselves totally. The more, the better from that. But there is a form of uh, delay we need to address, and most people don't know about nature. Really, they don't really know nature at all. They just have their own ideas of it, which is obviously wrong, because they keep saying that humans should keep exploiting nature, keep destroying nature. What's the big deal, they say? There is no deeper thought there at all. So even though they go on a forest trip on Sundays, they don't really learn anything. Conservative forces in human society have a long tradition for so-called conservation, but conservation doesn't work. At least not the fake conservation we do today. That's just the more greenwashing. And we keep returning to that word, greenwashing. It's but it is basically about awareness. We don't have that. Most modern human beings don't have anything even remotely like true awareness about their surroundings, about nature, about the forest, about the wilderness, about other life forms, and so on. So it is. It is about knowledge. It is about information. It is about wisdom, old wisdom, too, of course. 10,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, humans knew nature, knew it intimately. But then a group of people decided to go to war against nature, and they have kept doing that all the time since. So
I think
we
I
must.
think the young wisdom, if you want, the young wisdom is that we have to destroy nature in order to save the climate, right? That's the very, very, very youngest, the newest wisdom from the greenwashing classes, from the upper classes, and from the people who are talking at the cops, right? To them, mining the seafloor to get some rare minerals that they can put in their windmills or cell phones or whatever. That is kind of how to be green these days.
Yes, and oil, right? Oil from the jungle, um, and all. It's as I said, it's funny uh, because they do want to destroy nature in order to save it. It's so obvious because any effort humanity has done has just made everything that much worse. Any solution is nothing of the sort. They when a certain soap is ruining a lake, they just invent another soap that is destroying the lake even more. So they don't get it. They don't get that you have to transform human society. We have to transform human society, of course, and we have to transform ourselves, return to that grace, if you like, we once knew by heart. That should have been obvious, but it isn't. But those of us really appreciating nature, really feeling both alive and at home there, we know that it just can't continue like it is doing right now, because as I said, human desires, at least as they are right now, is immaterial because they are so off. They yes, like politics will be rushing in to take their place. So now we need to change, transform ourselves, transform human society, and return somewhat to what we once all knew. That's the solution. That's the only true sustainable solution. We see it's so when you observe things, it should have been obvious to all. It's such an easy. It's so easy to see that. But they are just shifting their consciousness to other things, to capitalism, to exploitation, to destruction of the spirit and of the natural world. So, and that's their thing, their only thing. They are destroyers, and that is how we should view them. Really, their solution will never work. Their solutions will never work because they are at best fake solutions. Their version, really, a distraction from the truth, the obvious truth. Yes, it's. Of course, we get frustrated. It's impossible to not get frustrated when we live in such a totally fucked up world. So words are inadequate, but words and action together might have worked or might work in some way, right? Because it is possible to prepare for the collapse. So for everyone who knew about it, that wants to prepare for it, even nations could have prepared for it, but they never will. It's 100% certain that humanity as a species won't do anything to solve any of their major problems. We see that every day, how they focus on the wrong things, the completely wrong things, the completely wrong solutions that aren't solutions at all. It is scaling back current human society would be an obvious start of of the solution, of the true solution. But you are just called names when you try explaining that to them. I can handle that easily because I have been called names for my entire adult life. But some people are afraid to speak up in public, and they shouldn't be, because they can't fuck up more than those that are currently speaking up and are allowed to speak up in public.
Roberto should be allowed to speak up in public, I think.
Wonders never cease.
Most certainly.
Thank you, Amos. Indeed, your observations there, Amos, absolutely to the letter. I'm right with you, as you probably know, brother. And I thank you also for the microphone going south. Thank you, brother. Deeply appreciated. Excellent space with you and Amos, as always. I will be sharing a few more observations in the due course of things. Indeed. I always think of the words that are reiterated when we talk about the collapse of societies, the collapse of indeed our global communities. Much is to be gained and learned here in a process of evaluation, understanding, And indeed, for those of us that still persist in not wanting to take on board any of this at all, we are paying the ultimate price for that. We see this every single day. This is no fairy tale utopia of happy endings that we are conscripted to. In fact, far from it. We are on this road of our own making across the geographical regions of our societies because we refused to understand that we are not greater than our life support systems. This is continuing to be part of the evaluation process, the faulty evaluation process that is sending us to our graves, and will continue to do so. We have, thanks to the Industrial Revolution, gained such a pomposity of mindset and thought, and such a pomposity of ideologies in our heads, that we do indeed have not only become detached from nature, but we think that nature does not have any need to guide our sustenance or survival at any conceivable level. A very, very bad idea indeed. Indeed, we are seeing how bad it is when our own communities are disappearing underneath the waves or being indeed obliterated with wildfires, tornadoes, hurricanes, and all other extreme events that we care to see. Continuing to not just bring wake up calls to us as a global community, but showing us hands down of what deadly ignorance can do on the grandest of scales when a human species decides to configuratively bury the proverbial heads in the sand. Such things do not go unnoticed, of course, by those of us that are fully mentally equipped to understand the true credentials of what is happening across our societies, the real given situations. Remember that capitalism was born to do this. Capitalism was part and parcel of the fully programmed workings of why we continue to be where we are today. Capitalism, of course, making sure that the vast majority of us were indeed worked to death for very little in order to make a tiny handful of rich elite even more powerful than they already are, just so that we can grovel in the gutter with just enough food to be able to subsist on, to give us enough strength to be able to work even more to our graves for those handful of powerful elite, which continues to be sending us categorically within our own given community systems that we hold dear to our friends and our families, to indeed not just our watery graves, but indeed to the graves of all encompassed dexterity of which we continue to see play out at the hands of every single type of extreme weather event of which you are likely to see and will continue to see times out even more over the coming decades, or what is left. Remember, extreme weather events are removing your infrastructures and your communities by the day. And the icing on the cake, of course, will be the collapse of the systems and society structures of which you know and live in now, and continue will be so. The banking systems, as we continue to talk about. And it's not just idle predictions here, it is cast iron clear clarity for what it truly is. The banking facilities and indeed global banking systems will collapse on the most massive of scales, taking everything and everyone financially that thought that nothing could ever touch them in this world will have to think categorically again, because they most undoubtedly will be touching them. The sad part of it is, of course, that a lot of this could have been mentally understood if we hadn't had such a sheer mass, all encompassing, blanket covering scale of delusional and deliberate denial to the very core of us as human beings on this earth. A lot of it, of course, could have been anticipated far sooner if we had had the mental credentials to be fully wired up and equipped to understand just what was happening to us. But of course, a human species on full meltdown alert was hardly going to be given the full dexterity to be able to realize just exactly what was going on around them until far, far too late. Remember that our banking systems will collapse for a reason, not just because it gives me great pains to even have to say the words, because we all suffer here. There are no winners here. We're not talking about levels of gains and wins. Everyone in a society collapse, everyone in a climate and ecological collapse are losers, not winners. We all have communities we care about. We all have people we care about. We all have, indeed, families and friends that we care about. When families, friends, communities, relations fragment and are directly affected by social, society, ecological, climate, and environmental collapse, every single person suffers at the end of the day. It does not matter whether indeed your pockets are paved with gold or filled with gold, or whether your pockets have a few crumbs of bread in them. If you are in the firing line, you are in the firing line. It is a crystal clear understanding of the situation for what it truly is, and a lot more besides. We're talking about society collapse. It is discussed and encompassed in many different ways, I grant you, and will continue to be so. I have no doubt about that. But the fact of the matter is that while we continue to dissect, analyze, understand the whys and wherefores and the whens and the ifs of that level of collapse, it will be, to no enduring extent, the fact it will be faced by 8+ billion people, and it will be gone through by 8+ billion people, because this is the reality of it, whether we like it or whether we don't like it. We have brought on this carnage ourselves. We continue to bring this carnage on ourselves. There is not a day goes by when we don't inflict the deep, catastrophic social wounds within ourselves that continue to manifest, indeed, into the levels of decay, unrest, collapse that we continue to see played out respectively across our societies. Nothing is sacred, nothing is spared, and it won't be. Every single particle is now under threat of existence as we know it, and will continue to be so. Our societies, you ask, how long can they go on for? When will the topple happen? When is this great divide finally going to occur? When is the abyss going to be part and parcel of the slippery slide? How much is too much? How much can we gain by taking an understanding before any more is taken away from under our feet? Let me put it like this. So much here has to be understood for the complexities of the systems of which are maneuvered and maneuvering around you. Society collapse is not one given quality or one given element. It is attached to every element. It is attached to economies. It is attached to banking. It is attached to property. It is attached to global technological communication. It is attached to ecological systems. It is attached to climate collapse. The whole thing, indeed, is all encompassing. It is attached to lack of policy. It is attached to lack of level of commitments, hands down. It is attached to lack of governmental and political and leadership of any semblance of governance for the greater good of you, the people on this planet. These things notwithstanding are part and parcel of what continues to be taking place and removing what is left of your society's structures around you. Heartbreaking does not begin to describe how unsettling and how unstable and how wicked and how vile and how turbulent all this is. I talk about communities, I talk about capitalism, I talk about democracies, I talk about emotional and structural and geopolitical instabilities and economic instabilities. Every single one of them is fragmenting around us. We have our own unique ways of discussing these things in these live room spaces and will undoubtedly continue to do so. We have much to discuss and so little time to be discussing these things in. And the fact remains that while the time schedule is diminishing that window of semblance of intelligent conversation by the second, we continue to persist, that is, of those of us, the general public, to believe wholeheartedly that our societies, our structures, our leaders, our systems, and our policies can see us through everything that is disintegrating before our eyes. How utterly misguided can you get? Oh, sure, that's exactly what it is, but it's a lot more than that. I've said many times in many different ways that the technological revolution has actually catapulted us to an even greater fragmentation of our societies at every conceivable level. The technological revolution has been what I call a utopia of fragmentation in all its tentacles and its content, and will continue to be so. Those members of the public that continue to think that the abundance of every technological feature known to the mental being of mankind is to the greater good of everything within our societies, think again. Because I promise you that it truly isn't. The fact is, we are paying the price for these technological revolutions. We are paying the price for a world that has become so complicated, so deadly, so evil, so dark, so all-encompassing, and so absolutely mentally barren of decency at every single level. We are paying prices here that we could not have imagined, even in our own lifetimes, that we would be sacrificing at any conceivable level. And we are doing, and we will continue to do so, because we have not fallen far enough yet. I promise you that this scale of being, this scale of balance, this scale of tipping over, we talk about climate and ecological tipping points and environmental tipping points. Let me put it like this to you, my friends. We have got social tipping points. We have got community tipping points. We have got society collapse tipping points, which are already on the scale of abyss, even as I say these words. And they will only continue to manifest themselves in ever greater division with greater cracks, if you will, a bit like a building that is suffering from terminal subsidence, where the cracks continue to persist, but the surveyor continues to tell you that all is well, that there is nothing wrong, that the building is structurally sound, which we know that it isn't. Our societies are very much like that now, and will continue to be so. Nothing is spared here. Nothing is off the cards. Nothing is out of bounds. The entire thing is about as rickety and as shaky and imbalanced as you could possibly wish for. We're basically counting the hours of the descent here into full-blown and full-scale societal decay, collapse, fragmentation, disorientation, and a total wasteland of the most epidemic proportions. Of course, the members of the public who you might be sharing this information with might think that you are mentally insane yourself for even uttering the words. And this is one of the fundamental problems that we have discussing these elements of societal collapse, entwined with climate and ecological collapse on the grandest of scales. The fact of the matter is that the public are not mentally wired up to understand the levels of unprecedented collapse at all levels of which we continue to have to endure on this planet in your communities, in your countries, no matter where you are. The goalposts changed, but not in your favor. Something that I hate to have to say, I promise you. I do not want to have to be a purveyor of what I call the doomerist angle of indeed putting out there the fact that the fragmentation is as dire, all encompassing, and as fundamental as we can possibly mentally decipher at present time. But the facts remain for the facts that they truly are. We are in this situation. It is that bad. And we haven't even begun to see how bad it will continue to get over the coming years. Having said that, I will take a pause going, Seth. I know you want to share some words, brother. What would you like to share with us again in the room?
Indeed, Robert, and thank you very much for that comment and the points.
Thank you, going.
Yeah, so indeed, we have just before the summer recess, we put out a what do you call that? A cutting of a video, or the last episode before the summer, and we posited that 25 years is kind of a realistic, realistic outlook for how long we have before the full societal collapse and the bottleneck. So in that, as I just put in the chat, there are only really grim and slightly less grim options, in that 25-year perspective. Only really grim and slightly less grim options. The less grim one has a still living biosphere and a living planet in it. So that is kind of the hard point to sell, or the hard understanding to sell. We're not selling utopia. We're not selling a shiny, happy planet where everybody has flying cars and 20 servants. We're selling a slightly less grim collapse than the total collapse where every plant and animal dies with us, right? So this is Extinctionati after all. We're not selling holidays in Spain, right? So when I think it's important to emphasize again what Amos said earlier, that watching COP not just kind of as a døgnflue, as a one-day fly thing that we have in the forest, and some kind of water nymph. Not just as somebody who is young today and watches his first COP on the internet, and that's that. We sort of watching the COP in a 30-year perspective, right? We've seen all the COPs because we are old people and we can hardly walk. So when you watch COP in a 30-year perspective, and you have, let's say, mental turnarounds within that array of COP conferences, as we mentioned, that maybe 15, 20 years ago, we stopped watching it in anticipation and hoping that they would finally get their finger out this time, as we say in Scandinavia anyway. Finger out of their ass, as the full saying would be, and started realizing that they're never going to do that. They're never going to stop the oil and gas industry and the coal-fired power stations. They're never going to do that. And parallel to that is another line of thinking where you're thinking maybe there is no solution to the problem that is civilization and overshoot, right? Maybe we're just deluding ourselves that if we can just fix this one thing, then all will be good and blah blah blah. No, that is not reality. And I heard today on the podcast called Breaking Down Collapse, which has daily episodes now, and it's really really good. Or every other episode is good. The other one is bashing Trump, which I've heard 1,000 times. I don't want to hear what people think about Trump. I know it. I know what you think about Trump. and I think that as well. But the episodes that are good are actually really good, which is strange because the Trump episodes are, uninteresting. Um, he had looked into, let's say, the psychology of the people who are collapse aware and who are in the collapse spaces. There's been some research done on that, and that one of the points of that was that people who have been in their lives depressed, depression, is that a word? Yeah. People who have been depressed and maybe have a kind of a deeper, low burning depression, whatever, they actually see realities better, less rosy than other people. So the people who have never been depressed and maybe are 15, 20 years old, they will say, "Oh no, we can fix everything. We just need this new gadget from this gentleman in the comment section, and then everything will be fixed in a fortnight." While the older gentleman or woman who has been through some of those, have seen a couple of hundred of those suggestions, have had some depressions for different reasons, I guess. Uh, they are more like, I don't think these upper class bullshitters down there at the COP conference are going to save anything. Now they're just going to line their pockets. And maybe that is cynical, but maybe that's closer to the truth than the young, unexperienced person understands, right? I would go with the native Indians and say that the elders, the wise old people, maybe they have a point sometimes. Jon, what do you want to say to us?
Oh, greetings. Hello. Thanks for the space. And I was in this previous space. And, what was I going to say? Well, I was just coming to hear about the COP. And I know Nanda was saying, what would you sacrifice? How far would you go? So I guess, and on these spaces, these are like internet spaces that are recorded onto a surveillance app of people who are exactly the people we're kind of speaking against. So it's sort of like, I don't feel like it is also, it's not like a bragging space of like what you're doing, because these are the very things that would require you to sort of not follow the rules, I guess. So I think it's like, it's good to hear the thoughts, and I really need like the sarcasm. That really helps me, the humor, the sarcasm, in terms of like showing up to places where there's some strategy and there's some real action. Like, I'm not going to speak on that too much. I think it's kind of good that we are speaking in such a way that we're like, doesn't sound, I don't know, it's almost like that we are doing nothing. It's almost like a sort of dual benefit. So I try to keep it pretty like, I'm riding a bike and not flying and really not driving or not trying to heat this winter, just trying to live. I have shelter, so at least that, and then that cuts out most of the winter effect, and then I'll just dress as if I'm outside, just sort of penny pinch on energy and things. And I'm not having kids. I mean, I'm not in a position to have to make that choice anyway, so good for me. But I think that when I notice my friends who have kids, they're really not thinking about this stuff. And, it's sort of like be in a good mood and just keep on going and provide for the dependents. And that just full of fossil fuels and flying around and economics and it's just kicking it down the road, right? But not having sort of it just feels like, my family is I'm sort of at the youngest of the family, and we're probably not going to continue on, and so then it allows for us to be a little more radical in our daily issues. Oh, I think Little B, you have your mic on. But I mean, I think that I've been plant based. I kind of shifted back out of that, different health things, and I'm kind of shifting back, pretty much there. But I'm just not going to say it. I'm just going to keep certain family recipes for the times when I see my family every once a year or something. And in terms of just trying to learn how plants grow and just trying to like crack seeds open and really like, I think I counted 116 house plants that I've got right now. They're all just little vines. They're really easy. And I just on this like very tiny area that I do control legally, just want to get the most oxygen, just the most. And that's, I feel like that's greenwashing. Everything I'm talking about is like still greenwashing because I'm in the society. I'm in this civilization. And and then all this stuff about the plastics, like I'll just live in my own landfill. I'll never throw a thing out. I just never want to throw anything out. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to make something artistic with it. And then that'll just be given to a friend or, and the thing is like, here's this, like the money side. I don't have any stable income. I'm just like, it's all or nothing. It's gig or not. It's, you get an art job or you don't. And then I see my friends in the States, they're losing snap and I'm trying to send them food. I'm trying to send them stuff. So it's like, well, I'm glad that I have something and then I'm going to just help one person, in terms of like First Nations, Indigenous in Canada, there's like this horrible thing. 3 land defenders got charged and then it's like a chilling effect now in the law, It was like when they were there was this like heavily, it was in the West Coast and heavily armed RCMP. These are like our federal police, and they were defending unceded territories, right? And so, but then there's like meetups here where you're, people are supporting the land defenders out here, and there was a law that they actually got to stop. So it's kind of just like these little wins but I don't really, I worked on this couple documentaries for the UN Climate Action Summit 2019, and it just all the information that I was exposed to was like super urgent. And then, we ran off and did all the pandemic stuff, and it just feels like then society bounces back and is like, I never want to be restricted again. I don't want to think about anything. I don't want to talk about anything. It's just me, 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 me. Let's fly here. Let's do that. I'd be happy to just keep being locked down myself. Like, if I am the problem, a human taking from the resources, let me take as little as possible to stay here, bike to where I can get things with no packages, and that's it. Here, we just had an election in the city, and I voted the most like progressive left is like environmental housing, party. So we had tons of parties, and then the centrist won, and one of their platforms is to like audit and maybe remove bike lanes. And we had this like, we were supposed to have this like mass, we have these critical mass bike rides where like just a bunch of bikes take over. So there were these like actions to go and like prevent these candidates that were talking about the bike lanes. And I think that it's like the bike lane becomes this thing about like everyone wants to hate on it. oh yeah, they all like violate the rules and stuff, but we don't. It's like the tourists that come in, they do the rental bikes and they just like go on the electrical bikes and they just do whatever they want, or the couriers that drive in that ride in the streets. But me, I just follow, you know. But everyone disrespects it. Everyone walks into it. Everyone, and then now they spent all this money to put them in, to like make them really nice. And there's like plants along the way and stuff. And now they're talking about like taking them down because I guess we felt like we made the cars feel unwelcome in the city. You know, there's not enough room for them to park, and so they all voted for this like centrist one. So I don't know. They say voting is supposedly the best climate solution, and so you do that, and it doesn't even crack a dent. So, anyways, this cop thing, it's such a weird name, like like cop out, or is it like for cops to come and like suppress the actions, you know, or is it like cop? What does it even stand for? Criminal overshoot propaganda. I don't know. That's all I got right now.
Indeed. Thanks for that, John. John, wasn't sure whether you had the microphone there going south for a minute. Um, Hopefully, yeah, you have. I'll say a few words. It's all right to go in south. I'm not quite sure how long you'll be keeping this room space open for, brother. Indeed, just gone 12 UK time, my time here. Must be pretty late over there, I think in Greenland. Some great content there from you, John. John, indeed, we know. I think I do like the way that you encompassed those letters for cop. Certainly rings true for me, brother. Conference of the Parties, I think not. The original configuration, of course. Far from it in my book. Indeed, I'll have to be brief and hand the microphone over to you again in a second. Going south because my battery is pretty much drained for I do. I want to say a big hello to my environmental dear friend in Canada. It's Kim. She's here with us. It's great to see you here, Kim. Thanks for joining us indeed as we continue to say and do and tell it like it is on a global stage platform. Going south, microphone is yours,
Yep.
brother, because I do have to put charge in the old proverbial phone. So
Yeah,
thanks
thank
again
you.
for
And we're going to the top of the hour and the coming hour. And hello to Kim. You're very welcome to grab the mic. And I see Nanda is on the mic and Little B. I would like to thank John again. I was fighting the biking tribe, the war against the cars for 30 years in Oslo. So I know how that feels. Everybody hates you, and you come to work or to school with dirt on your trousers and stuff, all of that stuff. But you don't have to go to the gym after being at school or after being at work because you actually used your body to transport yourself. So that's a good thing. Does anybody want to speak? Nanda, perhaps?
No, I just wanted to thanks for the room, and it's late here, and we continue tomorrow. But have a good evening, and yes, we catch up soon.
Is anyone speaking right now?
Sorry, I was I forgot to to unmute. Okay, I'll start over. I love what I was going to say. I love the night. Love after midnight. It's very inspiring to me, and so on. And one other thing about the night, to cut it short compared to my first tryout, you feel even better the wrongness. Growing up, you feel the wrongness wherever you look, really. You can't avoid feeling the wrongness. And who wants to live in wrongness, in a wrong place, in a wrong time, and so on, right? It's but you want to live, and you want to live, have a great life, and live with capital L. So it's we can't do that without. It's just, we can only do that by exception today. The great moments are fleeting. So it isn't just that the current society is physically wrong. It's spiritually, mentally wrong too. It is once again ruining, destroying everything making life worth living. That it hasn't managed to destroy our fire or spirit says a lot about the greatness of the human spirit, if you like. We are perhaps at our best when we can fight against unsurfmental odds at enormous when we have enormous odds against us, because then we feel we are not hampered, we are not impeded by choice, if you like. I like choices myself, of course, but as a philosophical thing, it's great to no longer have a choice, because you have. There is no doubt anymore, right? And they used dope against us. The tyrants, the establishment, the insane and the lunatic establishment use dope against us all the time to make us work against ourselves, to fight ourselves, so to speak. So, yes, I tried to make a list once over all the things that were wrong in the current society, current inhuman society, but I didn't get to more than, I stopped at several hundreds, around 200, give or take, because and I knew the list was endless. So if we're going to save the world and also give ourselves a great life, that's who could go against that, right? But they do. They don't want us to have a great life. Those in charge don't even want themselves to have a great life, because their life isn't much to brag about at all. They just have lots of money and power, which is why would anyone just be stuck with that? It's baffling, so damn baffling. But you like I keep saying, if you expect the life, expect life to be rational, you are doomed to disappointment, of course. Of course, there is no contradiction between emotion and reason. It's just in today's society that looks like there is a contradiction. Everything is in contradiction today, really. We live in a suicidal society and speak about the greatness of life, how great the current society is. So,
and you also get tired of money and groupies and all of that kind of stuff, right? It's as an old person, you can't really cope with all of that. No, I totally agree. I'm just being silly. So Kim disappeared. That was a shame. I guess Jon, do you want to come on again?
Yeah, thanks. A quick thing I've just realized that I guess it's kind of slang, but cop also means to buy something. If you're gonna cop, I'm gonna cop that. I'm gonna cop that whatever pair of shoes or something, that jacket. It means to buy something.
That's actually from Norwegian or from
Is it?
Nordic. Yeah, we say köpe or köpe, köbe. So that's a Norwegian inheritance to the British, I guess. When Vikings occupied them, they got knife and wife and old egg and all kinds of words from Norwegian that didn't come from the south, didn't come from France or whatever. So yeah, so I didn't know you said cop about the köpe.
I mean, it's just something that has been. I guess that's just. I don't know if it comes from English or where it comes from, but this is what people would say in a slang way.
You have, for instance, you have Copenhagen, right? So that's København in Danish. It means actually the harbor where you buy stuff, right? So Copenhagen is the buying dock or whatever. Yeah.
So is that related to shop? Is it like the sound somehow migrated from cop to shop?
That I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. But
And then I was gonna say another play, if you're gonna do another episode and play with the titles. Cap. It's a new slang. It means it's a lie. That's cap. It's fake. It's a deception. It's a lie. That's cap. So maybe that's cop. I don't know.
yes. The learning about language is very fascinating, and any author has to be a little bit interested in it by default, really. So it's so great following the words through the centuries, how they have evolved, how they have changed. And even the meanings have changed, of course, because language today are usually just another tool of the oppressor, of course, since virtually anything is. So language is designed, if you like, over generations to serve the oppressors, the tyrants, because people heed them, heed the oppressors, heed what they are saying, and everything. Try to emulate them. Just like all wealthy people, or many wealthy people are usually seen as heroes today, but they are nothing like that, of course. If anything, they are the blackest villains that have ever lived. So, but once again, even if we got rid of all those in power, all the tyrants, it's the system that is wrong, not just a few wheels within the system. If you those that not seeing that, I read a novel once. The novelist, he let the hero or the main protagonist in the novel, he said to really solve humanity's problem, we had to kill 20 million people, kill all the overachievers and stuff, all the power hungry and tyrants. But I don't agree with that, because the system would still be there. So once again, we must change, transform human life, transform human society, and seek back to a time where we actually both lived and thrived. That's the obvious solution, of course.
I think
But
sorry.
humanity as a species, current humanity as a species, will not choose that. They will choose suicide. 100% certain. So we have our work cut out for us, that's for sure. So have all the other somewhat reasonable people gathering around the table and airing their frustrations and yearnings and longings and stuff. So a revolution is quite possible. I think it was Lenin that said that, or someone like him, perhaps Guevara, said that anything seems, all revolution seems impossible until it seems likely. It suddenly seems likely, inevitable. It suddenly seems inevitable.
I think there is
So
a saying that society at every time is only 4 meals away from anarchy. I think that's
that too.
accurate, or maybe 6 meals. I thought it was interesting with the cap meaning lie, John. You know, one of the big non-solutions that they are selling in or down there in the COP thing is cap and trade, and I always try to present it as something new, as if we didn't try and fail doing that for 40 years in the Nordic and the European context. We already tried it. One of the biggest quote unquote successes of cap and trade was when the Soviet Union collapsed, because then they could suddenly sell billions of polluting licenses, because their industry was shut down, it collapsed, and then the Western Europe could and Statoil and all the oil companies could just buy very cheap CO2 quotas from from the Russians. So it doesn't work. They're just still selling it, and you have the carbon capture and storage, all kinds of lies and myths about, you know, it's kind of quick fixes. And the very founder of this podcast, Extinctionati, back in the day, he made a, you know, back of a napkin calculation about how many cap and trade or CO2 sucking factories you would need to have around the world in order to just get it down to livable levels, or to just vacuum back the CO2 that we emit every year. And you know, the math doesn't it doesn't doesn't calculate, it doesn't scale at all. One of the other things I'm planning on writing about in the sort of COP blog post or whatever is how the science literature, the science reports about the climate, carbon tipping points in the Arctic and stuff, how they were we passed the tipping points. Let's say maybe one in 2002 and one in 2005, that kind of thing, and how they all kept quiet about it when it came up to summary reports like IPCC reports. How the scientists who are doing the sort of footwork, the field work and stuff, they are not in doubt about permafrost being run away and stuff, but they don't want to use that kind of words in the IPCC reports. They don't want to say stuff that is painful or demotivating. Yeah, so kind of document that kind of in a detailed way. Because then then obviously we can use that article for the next COP or for the next IPCC report or whatever, and we can also try to reach out to some of these report authors and get somebody on tape or whatever. And I think it's quite important because, as I said earlier today, if they just keep on saving something that is like beating a dead horse, saving something that already has run out, the saving in itself is going to be very destructive. We mentioned like ocean floor mining and all kinds of havoc that we are going to do in a desperate attempt to save, to keep a horse that already bolted from the stable, basically. Yeah, so those are kind of plans that I have for the essay, and I will let Jon come back with the talking stick.
Yes. Thank you for the talking stick. It also occurred to me that the letters COP, they're like one letter short. Like if you add an R, it becomes corp. So then that's like kind of maybe a segue into talking about corporations and how they are sort of an unseen entity that is strongly impacting human society, right? So we have this I don't know, psychological pact of laws where we recognize things in the rule of law, and under the rule of law, a corporation is recognized as a legal person, which is a really odd concept. But sometimes you hear about this, and it's sort of like a financial instrument or something. It has perhaps some utility to be there, as sort of an umbrella for a group of people doing a venture or something, but you wouldn't, like, let's say you have a hammer or a calculator, you wouldn't say that those are also, because we're using them, that they have legal personhood, right? Like, so and then when we look at legal personhood, and it's this thing, it has rights, it has freedom of expression, and what is that freedom of expression? Well, it's a way, spending money on elections, and so it can sue people, and then it can protect things and have intellectual properties that they buy up an invention, and now you can't use that invention without, I don't know, paying them or licensing or something. So there's these influences on it, on society, but they also don't, kind of in a sci-fi fantasy way, they don't just die. Like if a regular person God forbid, we say there's like a life expectancy, some happens earlier, some really young, and sometimes you might live really long into your old age, but it might be like 90s, 100. But a corporation doesn't technically have an expiry date. It's not a biological entity, so it just can kind of continue on as long as sort of its ability to keep eating money. It could die if that's the only way it could die, is if it starves of money. But even then, it can be resurrected. So there's like almost like a concept of resurrection. It can declare bankruptcy and then come back again under a different name. So resurrection, or not resurrection, reincarnation, let's say. Reincarnation, because it comes back as a different name. So you don't even know it's that person. So I feel like we discuss ourselves and humanity and we're like the worst and worst and worst. But there's also these that act as persons and they're not biological. So they can't have any fear of when the ecosystem collapses or the weather becomes unlivable, right? Like, because these corporations are registered, let's say, at a street address, but if a hurricane tornado comes and destroys that, it doesn't die in the building like the people do. It's still registered and it can just find another address somewhere else. So it is always sort of, you're able to just keep it alive. And then interestingly, this type of legal person can own the assets of another legal person or own basically another corporation. So it's like chain ownership, which is very similar to like slavery, but we don't allow slavery under our laws. We recognize that is like wrong and should be never again. But then it's sort of this chain ownership structure that mirrors that. And we've declared it a legal person. So how can a legal person own another legal person that owns another legal person and all, right? So I think that we have to talk about that without getting too, too dangerous sounding, right? And yeah, it makes me think of that movie Blade Runner. Blade Runner, where a Blade Runner is someone, okay, there's these synthetic humans walking around, and there's a philosophical thing in the movies because it's like, are these real people? Are they people? They live, they feel emotions and stuff. But in Blade Runner, there's an expiry date, and the Blade Runner has to go and retire them, quote unquote. So should corporations have an expiry date where they have to retire? And then maybe something else has to go, and there's like more like groups of people, and it's not a legal person. It's just groups of people, right? With a shared endeavor, loosely affiliated. So that's just kind of. I had one more thing to say on that. But yeah, it's just kind of
okay. Yeah,
it's just kind of like they're not biological, and we don't really have a way to address this kind of almost immortal, eternal thing that acts almost like an equal, but more equal than us. And yeah, if I think of the thought, I'll put my hand again.
Yeah, I would just shoot in that I was the translator to Norwegian of the book The Corporation, from the documentary film the Corporation. So I translated that into Norwegian, and it almost made me bankrupt and that kind of details. Yet I also see, on the very small scale, I see the sense in a corporation because the old man who was renting to me my apartment in Oslo, he died, and then his son took over. But for bureaucratic reasons, that was a hell of a problem. Oh, are you saying that the son took over the renting business after the father died? There was an Indian lady at the, what you call that, social, helping office, whatever. I had to apply for my rent in those days. So she would withhold my rent money for 3 months while they figure out how it could be that the father who used to rent the apartment to me had died and the son had taken over. That was impossible to understand for her. She was from India in Asia, by the way. So I was kind of on verge of famine or hunger or whatever, or homelessness due to that. And the solution, of course, was to that they created this corporation, this tiny company for that address, for that street address, right? So just to prevent that kind of bureaucratic hell. So after that, it was the corporation that was kind of renting out this apartment in downtown Oslo, because then it was no longer connected to one individual human person. So I can totally see the utility of having that kind of thing. But it's kind of a solution to a stupid bureaucracy, right? Because if you had the sensible people, even in Oslo, even in the big cities, they would understand that. Oh, yeah. So the son took over after the father. It's a story as old as humans, right? This goes back 1 million years in human and private uh, memory. So that should, even for people from India, should be easy to understand that that's what happened, and he is now, you know, getting the rent money. And what's so damn hard for you to understand, right? So you can go a long way with just humanity and empathy, that kind of thing. So maybe that's the story of why we have corporations. Some people suddenly lost all their empathy. I was thinking earlier when Robert spoke, because Robert boasts about living 40 miles from the cradle of the Industrial Revolution, I think, in England. And when I visited a couple of decades ago, I was taken to Wales, some Sunday trips with my friends over there, and to old church ruins and all kinds of things. But I was also talked or guided about the start of the Industrial Revolution, because these were that kind of people who thought about that kind of thing. And so what I understand is that prior to the start of the Industrial Revolution in England, you had made one important religious change that made it easier, but you had also made a social change, making society more brutal. You had thrown people out of their small farms or whatever, and forced them to rent in the towns and cities. So you had kind of already brutalized and industrialized kind of the social life first, I think, and then kind of making thing more like a utility. You look at people as utility. You look at the water mills as a utility for grinding corn and stuff, and you had kind of demystified nature, from the religious view of nature as humans and nature as kind of placed there by a god or whatever, and now they were more like cogs in a machine, right? So these kinds of let's say mental and psychological changes had to kind of happen before you could go all out a steam machine and trains and that kind of thing. Is that complete bullshit, Robert? Do you have a comment to to my kind of bad memory recollection of this?
Yeah, indeed, going south there. It is, without doubt. I missed part of what you said there because I did have phone on charge. But it is without doubt something that needs to be continued, to be talked and shared about, because it's vital that the understanding of this is continued forward. Without the understanding, as I've said, with so many of these issues that we bring to the table in these live room spaces, we cannot gain the ground of understanding that is so necessary. I trust, hopefully, I will also share going south that we can continue to talk about, hopefully, we can have activists and other people who are already in this. The situation with COP and people there on the ground that can bring us updates, so which I had hoped we might be able to have had in the room space, but being as we haven't had any Brazilian people able to update us comparatively tonight. Indeed, I had hoped that in my own room space, I hope that we can have more join us as the events at COP continue to play out. I do want to also mention, before I hand the microphone over to John, that his observations of the wording of that word COP was very nicely put together, I must admit. And I must say, John, I did like the way that you shared that, because indeed, as I've said, the situation within this entire process over there has nothing to do with the conference of the parties. It has everything to do, of course, with the extremities and the situations of which I've already discussed. Indeed, in my own room space a little earlier on this evening, we are not seeing content which is worthy of consideration at any level, not just with the public, but indeed on a business level. We indeed need to discuss the fact, and I know we comparatively would, or I know I will in my own ongoing room spaces, that businesses across our planet should have already been geared up decades ago for not just environmental, climate, and ecological responsibility, but geared up for what I call responsible safeguarding on the global platform stage, which is continuing to be completely bereft. Big businesses continuing to think that they continue to operate in the usual ways, which have no semblance of ongoing responsibility for future generations. Something else I do believe to discuss in the terms of what I call emergency mode going south, because we are all in emergency mode here and continue to be so. Everything indeed needs to have the seriousness of gravitas of discussional qualities attached to it if we are to be what I call understanding, communicating, and indeed bringing the essential elements to the conversation of what we are actually discussing when we're talking about anything to do with this process and anything to do with all the other extremities which are locked in with it. Having said that, I'll take a pause and hand you the microphone back going south, because we do have
Yeah,
John
yeah.
on the microphone.
I think it's a good wish. It's a good hope that we can have somebody that are in the COP. I think maybe it's not so realistic that it happens all by itself. Because like we are an 8 to 20 person proposition, and it doesn't just. We would have to reach out in some way, and also it may maybe be easier on your space than in a kind of sarcastic space that is calling the cop crap like this one. That wouldn't naturally draw people in, I think. And with that, I would say, Jan, microphone is yours.
Yeah, no, it's important for a bit of humor. I think that's kind of what I like. But yeah, but the corp, so it's like cop and then corp, and then maybe the next thing is corpse. That's a little darker, but I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but on the whole issue of like corporations and they have these legal rights and legal personhood, like I think me questioning that is not to say that they shouldn't exist at all or that they don't have a utility as a tool in a bureaucracy, but it's like there's many tools and we don't assign things legal personhood, just because there's a car that we drive or whatnot. So I'm kind of questioning whether it's the correct direction. Obviously, it wasn't, but that civilization takes to uh, take it to the point where they have these like elevated rights to be like almost sounding like they're equal to humans or individuals, but then in fact in practice they're much more powerful, more clout, more influence, more ways to act in the world. And when things are made, laws are made in their favor, then they go and they destroy on an automatic. You can't stop the machine at that point, but you can stop one person or. So I think it's about questioning whether we went too far with giving them so many rights, but then it's like walking it back to the point where it's like, not to say just they can't exist or something. It's just more like in that range of like, we haven't even really discussed it as like, are these laws correct or are these laws the right way to do it? Is there a way to go backwards so that maybe they're there and there's some bureaucratic role, but they don't outweigh human, biological living systems, right? Which is clearly under threat, and corporations are not under threat. I don't think. They're just sort of doing amazing according to their measures. So it's just that whole aspect that they're not biological, they're not sentient, they don't have any sense of danger to some these scientific proof, like this proof that we're in danger, right? So I think that's where I'm kind of like, I won't say like don't have any corporations at all. And then that example with you, that's kind of a funny thing because it's like that person sounds like they're only used to dealing with corporations. So that's kind of the danger of when you just rely on them to that extent where they can't figure out what the original purpose of them was just that kind of continuity, which is just a pragmatic thing. So it's almost like we let people rely on it too much that now they come to expect that as the only way to operate. So this is my
Yeah,
quick points.
brilliant. I was thinking while we're talking, I was thinking about if you think about the IPAC, the American Israel or whatever thing, as a corporation. Maybe it's not exactly a corporation, but if you think about that, because that's a thing, and you and I, we are persons, we are people, right? So what happens if you write something kind of hard against the IDF or Israel online or in a newspaper, and it's harsh enough, they will just sit down. That corporation will just sit down and tell all its employees to go on the phone, to call your boss, to call your soccer team, to call all the people that are important in your life, and say, this person is an anti-Semite, Holocaust denier, whatever, racist, and that is kind of how a thing like a corporation works, right? It has its agenda, it has its untouchability, it has its budgets. It can just go on and make your life unlivable just because you spoke out your opinion in an ongoing genocide, for instance, right? And yeah, so I'm kind of totally seeing the corporation as a monster, which is kind of where you are going with this. I guess that it shouldn't, they shouldn't have all these freedoms to do all they want, and it's an unfair battle if it's like me or Amos against the big IPAC monster, right? And they're phoning up your landlord and saying, "Do you want to have a Holocaust denier and an anti-Semite renting with you?" You know, they have no limits, right? And you know, truth doesn't matter to them. They have no empathy. So maybe that's kind of the future war against the AIs and the corporations, and maybe we should just go back to you know, family-owned businesses like the people I rented from in Oslo. Little B.
Hello. Yeah, the idea of a corporation being a person is, it wasn't before. It will not be in the future. This is a temporary capitalistic manipulative tool. And it, to me, is so interesting when I wish Nanda were here. She may have something to say. The indigenous peoples, I know I have friends in one of the original Iroquois nations. They insist, and I know in South America it's the same. The idea of that the mountain is a being, the river has rights as much as a human. It's so interesting to me that it's the opposite, to destroy nature, as opposed to another perspective is the trees, the river, the mountain, the land, the earth, the sky is a being just as valuable as an eagle, as a deer, as a human is. I just wanted to share that other position because just to get realizing how absurd this idea of a corporation is. Just a tool of manipulation. That's all it is. We need to, if there's no life in them, it is to destroy life.
Yeah.
It is like
Yes, indeed.
death walking more than it is the what is this the than to bring life to anything. So it's like a joke on all of us. So that's what I want to share. Thank you.
Only people in society should be people, of course. Of course, the mountain has a personality, a forest has a personality, and so on. And you can even argue that the earth is sentient, at least conscious, not perhaps sentient. But I agree with Little B, the very idea that a corporation can be a person says a lot, even more about the current insane, inhuman society, of course. You know, it's just a legal term that should be meaningless. It is meaningless, except for the vast power it holds. Like Going South said, they can just call all their employees and have winning any social media dispute, or not just social media, but society dispute as well. Robert Maxwell, he made all his 42 editors, chief editors, in all his 42 newspapers, write an editor in an editorial about the support of the Iraq war, right? And corporation is just more of that. The vastness, any vast company, not just the corporations. It's just that the corporation is their favored tool, really. But any major company, we should definitely I'm old enough to remember that not was all well with the local businessman, grocery owner either. They could be very unreasonable, but that's nothing compared to corporations because you can't argue with them. They don't. The corporations, they or it, isn't interested in arguing. They are just interested in getting their way in all kinds of unreasonable manner. So the grocery businessman selling food and stuff on a corner or in the village or so looks better and better by the day when we now see the alternative 50 years later.
Absolutely, and we have to go towards the end here. We have to wind down, but do go on, Amos.
No, I was done actually, so I'm ready to pack it in for the night. Actually,
Absolutely, and do we agree that we should have another cop crap too next week? I think that's kind of happening anyway. Yeah.
yes, we should address that shit. The more we address it, the better, really, because it is such an affront to human to anything, really. Yes, I'm a lack of words, actually.
Yeah, for once. I would like to put in something I wanted to say earlier, that one of the biggest deceptions of all in this context is the one about, the red party blaming the blue party, or the blue party saying that, oh, we are way better on climate than the red party, and if you only do one thing for the climate is to go vote for the blue party, right? So that's, fuck you. that's that's never gonna be the solution. And
it's the same in Europe, by the way, as well, right?
and
It's
even kind of even kind of neutral, objective people pointing out that that the blue party opened 200 new oil and gas fields during the latest administration. Whatever, it doesn't register. They just no, but the red party is way worse. It's just a stupid debate, and people are way too tribal about that kind of thing. And
yes,
if politics is your religion, you need to go to another cult. They go to a different cult. Change your cult.
there was a guy today that actually said that Biden didn't kill any children during his presidency. How is that possible to be so dense? It isn't, of course. It must be a lie, but their lies are brazen. They don't care about the truth. They don't even care about being believed. They just need to do their propaganda. That's their task. So, yes.
Totally. Final word from Robert, perhaps, and then I will push the button.
Yeah. Thank you, Going South. It's been a very productive meeting tonight, brother. And Amos, I've been delighted to hear your content as always, Amos. Your observations absolutely spot on. And indeed, yourself, Going South, likewise. My final words on this live room space for this evening's proceedings are this: another content, indeed, to another live conversation to engage in some content, if you will, on the what I call the extremities or the situations continuing to unfold in this COP30 conference would be welcome, and indeed to hear any people who are involved in the building who want to update us, hopefully for something positive and not something farcical. I will say this, that as we continue to strive forward for greater understanding and meaning on this climate and ecological emergency, to the content of needing to discuss this on a global stage platform with as many people as possible, I think we need to fundamentally realize how much ground we need to continue to cover. We have not covered it yet, and we still need to be able to bring forth a determination and dedication to be able to fundamentally educate a mass global audience like never before on just exactly what is the cold, hard reality of the events that we continue to see playing out day to day, be it human rights disintegration, democracy disintegration, climate disintegration, ecological disintegration, or environmental disintegration. It's all entwined, it's all there, and it's all needed to be fundamentally taken on board as seriously as possible. Because my final words are this: your lives depend on understanding the truth. Being in ignorance is not an option. And I'm saying that going south, the microphone to you, brother.